Hey, as we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and the day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard for us to see our way through. Beyond the normal mundane or where unscripted dreams live, join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dreams Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So people, before we get started here, make sure you like, subscribe, maybe even comment on the video, man. We try and get those likes up. We try and get those subscribes up too, man, or get more subscribers. All right, man, moving forward. So today's episode is literally titled Set Up for Failure, and basically being positioned to take a loss or dealing with lose-lose situations. So that's literally our focus for today. And so when you think about this concept, as far as set up for failure, I think that's really kind of self-explanatory. I think lose-lose situation is as well, which means you're in a situation where if you pick either route, you still lose, which whatever the outcome may be. So you may not see any thing positive out of there, which may drive you to do some things as far as self-sabotage in some situations because you're so frustrated because you feel like you can't win out of the situation. So we're going to help you navigate through that and even have commentary about it. So, Marcus, I'm going to let you start off with, man, as far as like our first key talking point, man.
So I want to start this off with the story of one of the first times professionally I felt like I was set up, set up to lose it. And if you find yourself in these situations, it's usually one of the first things that come to your mind or will come to my mind is, why would you not tell me that? Like, that's what I think of every time I get set up is like, why don't you just let me know that in advance? Right. So going back to it, I remember I was, I think this was my first job out of college, and it was, I was just meeting with some people for some clients, and I didn't understand like some of the dynamics. I was just kind of told like, hey, Marcus, you're going to go to this meetup and you're going to represent us. Okay. And then I asked, I was like, is there anything I need to know? And she's like, no, just go. You'll be all right. All right. So, okay. So anyway, I go to this meetup, and there's a lot of politics that went on that I was not made aware of that would have been very important to know, because it ended up being one of these things like, well, Marcus, I can't believe you responded like that. Like, this is an issue. I'm going to report you to whoever, like my supervisors were or something like that. And it was a situation where it's like, well, the people who sent me there knew that that was more of a hostile type meeting that required a certain type of approach, but no one felt the need to share that with me. And that was where I just that's one of those situations where it's like, you kind of sent me into this meeting to essentially embarrass myself and look stupid when you could have told me I could have responded a particular way and it'd been a non-issue, right? So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, I felt a little, I think the only frustration is that it was avoidable because that's something you do if you send a team member into a challenging environment. Because moving forward, it wasn't an issue because, right, once you know, easy day after that. But just one of those situations where you might find yourself frustrated. This is one of those things where this could be any type of work. Like you work in fast food, and they got you in the kitchen understaffed, and your manager calls you in, right? And they're like, all right, and they call you in, but they don't tell you that 3 people called off. So you're going to be running that ship by yourself. And it's like, why didn't you tell me that? Right. So.
Yeah, man, I've definitely been in a situation like that, man, when I was working for the most infamous place ever, Bob Evans. It's a running joke, but yeah, I remember one time that everybody called in hungover, and I was stuck doing dishes and cooking at the same time and doing a little bit of kitchen prep. It was awful, man, and it was a full house. I didn't get no brownie points or anything for that, man. It was just a regular day at the office, man. So I can understand those dealings.
So I guess just with that story, right, it's just really trying to explain that it can happen to you in various ways.
Yeah.
But I guess, Joe, my question for you is, would you rather not know or would you know? Like, would you prefer to them just someone tell you up front, like you about to have a bad day because you don't have any help and just like suck it up, or you go in under the guise that it's going to be all right, and then you get blindsided. Which would you prefer?
I would honestly prefer that someone would actually, if you're not going to tell me flat out, at least give me a hint or, like what we call red tape. So like, in corporate, you may call it red tape. So if you know that it's going to be something that you're going to have to quote unquote dance around, or there's going to be some kind of complication there, you could at least like in a professional manner, let somebody know like what's up, what's coming or what to expect. And my thing is, after that, it's really up to the other person to kind of like figure, read in between the lines. And in most cases, if we're talking about work terminology, considering this is something you do 5 days a week, give or take, um, you would pick up on what they're putting down basically. And so, yes, I would prefer someone to give me at least a clue so I can actually mentally prepare for what's about to come.
Yeah, because it's just one of those things where like sometimes you lose, but you don't know you're gonna lose. But when someone could actually have saved you in advance, that can be perceived in a different way. But I know there's a lot of people that understand it every day, like you being set up. Because and this doesn't even have to be like work related. Just could be like your friends or family, like just setting you up consistently to be in a position where you can't get ahead. And that's really what it is being set up to to lose. And it's also, I think, important to note that some people they just don't know what they're doing or they don't care. And it's not, I don't know, it's not always like a malicious thing. Like sometimes it's just someone's inability to manage, to communicate, and it's like, just to let you know, like what's going on. So it could be I just know it's supposed to get set up 24/7. And I think we'll get to that on the back end with like the risk management piece. But I guess, Joe, anything else you feels important?
Well, I think that's very important. Like you said, like that's the key part in a situation where, you're about to pretty much not win or this is going to be a difficult time for you. Communication and clarity is very, very important. So, you always want to make sure you emphasize on like the importance of clear communication with the people you work with. Maybe you might have like a running joke, or maybe you might have some kind of inside joke or inside, dealings with these people where them on a personal level. And sometimes you got to tap into that to really like pull certain information out of people. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that's the best thing to do, but unfortunately for you to be like the whiz king or the wise person in your job or being very thorough at your job, sometimes it takes you, out of your own element where you have to join other people's worlds, unfortunately, to kind of get an understanding of their train of thoughts. So before you make any assumptions or anything like that's going to contribute to any kind of misunderstandings, you want to definitely have some kind of rapport with the people you work with, or at least try to build one where you can kind of gauge where their temperament is at all times. Because people will have you out here on an island by yourself if you let them.
The last thing I want to say about that, Joe, you just made me kind of think about that, is that some people, like just professionally, right? Like that's the culture, is that you lose, other people win. And that's, if you can identify that early on, like there's some people, they just out it for self. It's an ego thing, or they just don't care. And if you find yourself in a situation where, this could be anybody, but if you find yourself not able to get ahead because you constantly, like at a certain point, and I think that's what we're about to go to next, at a certain point, it's your fault that it keeps happening. You keep taking L's. So just identifying that too, like it just the culture of the environment is one of which you're in. And it's just like, you just find yourself taking L's all the time, or people just leave you hanging all the time. Then it's time to really evaluate where you're at, what the culture is, and maybe find somewhere else to make moves.
Okay, moving forward to our next talking point, which is risk management and post situation reflection. So when you think of risk management, that's really like discussing or coming up with some type of strategy for mitigating risk. So what could potentially go bad? So if you know certain risk factors are in play with anything you're dealing with your job, uh, like, um, like I explained earlier with my, my short-term fast food industry, dealings, you know, the risk factor is that it's not a guarantee that you don't see the same staff at any given time, especially at a restaurant, because people quit, people call off all the time. And when you work part-time, it's even, it's even more rampant as far as like trying to keep track of like all the different people that might be around, So it's crazy, but it's something you have to take an account of so you can get yourself in the right state of mind. And also you would know exactly what to do without you actually having your boss on your ass, basically. So I think one of the big things is to pretty much identify the challenges and pretty much plan accordingly for those contingencies that will increase the chances of success. So you want to make sure that you really, really lock down on that, because that's really going to determine how long your shift's going to be versus how short your shift's going to be as well.
Wait, what? Shift? Shift for what? What are you talking about, Jim?
Shift. So when I say shift, like how long your like day of work's going to be, basically.
Okay.
So when you're for the people that work in the food industry, you know what I'm talking about as far as like a shift. But someone that might work in like full on corporate, you might refer to it like a day of work or whatever, or work day. But make a long story short, pretty much it's just different terminology, but basically, you know, you want to make sure that you take an account of all factors at all times, because that's going to determine if you're going to have a long day versus a very short day on the job.
Okay. So that's my fault for not understanding the context. I'm thinking shift, like, what? Like, like, but no. So yeah, and I think that's a good thing, Joe. Just as far as like understanding what you're like, just to get through the day,
Yeah.
right? And what it takes. And another thing, just thinking about like risk management, and like be careful with throwing people under the bus. Like when I'm going back to that situation where I was putting this meter and made to look stupid, pretty much, there was like 2 or 3 people I could have easily blamed for me not being in a position to like be perceived well. And that was like a first impression for me too, for at least like 6 or 7 people. So it made me look bad, but keeping that in mind, there was an opportunity for me to say, oh, well, that person didn't tell me that, or, oh, this is whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, be careful of, even if you get set up, sometimes if you're being set up and it's intentional, like it's malicious setup, I just won't throw anybody under the bus, because the reason I say it is because that might be somebody's strategy, is to put you in these situations where you're like, where you lose. But what happens is, this is the thing, like once somebody understands that you know what their strategy is, they can evolve their strategy to set you up in more complex ways, right? So if you understand that the agenda, like somebody's agenda is to just make your life miserable, or, put you in situations where you're not perceived in a good light, let them keep doing it, but don't let them know that you're doing it, because eventually you'll get to the point where you can just rise above what they're doing and you can kind of like circumvent their tactics. But the thing is that sometimes we get put in these situations and we're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to war with this person. Or we gonna really like tit for tat, essentially. And that's something that like I've always been pretty cautious about, just because like you have to pick and choose the battles you fight and the enemies that you have. And some people, it's actually better for them to think they had an upper hand, because they don't perceive you as a threat when they actually think they're in control. So I got people right now, they just think because I don't say anything that I don't know what's going on. I just don't say anything so I can know what's going on. That's all. So, it's really just psychology, but also just, you got to pick your spots too.
So with that being said, man, let's expound upon that. So like clearly now basically you display that you do some of these things intentionally just so it doesn't, your workload or whatever, your stress levels don't, spike up, right? You kind of want to keep things where it's at under control, where you can manage it and you can rise above the situation however you may choose to. So if we're moving over into like a post situation reflection, man, like I guess what advice could you give somebody out there as far as like post situation reflections? Like what's the key thing to focus in on if you're gonna like, in your situation, kind of quote unquote play dumb? Like what would you recommend other people to do in a situation like that? Hindsight. Like what are the key things to look out for, I guess, just so you can have it your way?
First thing to do, take accountability for the situation, because that returns the power to you to actually make decisions. So think about it, like Joe, like you talk about Bob Evans, right? And
Yeah.
how you get set up to wash the dishes and do all this stuff, and people call off. Listen, I've been a victim of, I can't tell you how many shifts I filled in for people and I regretted it, right? So what you need to do is you just have to learn how people operate. Like if someone puts you in a bad spot, what is it? Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know what I'm saying? So that's really the approach, right? Is it shouldn't happen more than twice. It should, and I think just like going back to the shift thing, if you notice that you have a manager or somebody who calls you, they're like, hey, you want to come in to work, and then that whole day sucks and it's not worth that little change you made anyway, then you might just not answer your phone. You're not scheduled. You're not scheduled. You're not scheduled. I'm just saying, you're not scheduled. That's all I'm saying. So it's one of the things where, like, sometimes when you identify how people, and sometimes it's not like when it's not purposeful, like some people, like their management style, there's like gaps in their ability to see things.
Right.
So like sometimes that's your opportunity too, because someone can be so weak in the area. Like you look at someone like a manager or a team who has like a ton of turnover, right? Because they're bad managers. The job, actually, you can have a crappy job, but your boss can be so good that you'll work that trash job because you have good leadership. So it's one of those things. But I think as soon as you pick up on someone's tendency to make your life more difficult, start to work around that person, and just find ways to like maneuver. Like, give me a difficult situation, Joe, like a random one of something that somebody does.
Um, like I said, well, not to take everything out of context, just to keep it in context with the restaurant.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about your manager has a buddy that works and he lets his buddy call off all the time because he didn't party with the buddy the night before. So the buddy gets to call in consistently every other Saturday whenever they hang out, but you're always scheduled, ironically, on those same Saturdays. So you got to pick up his slack, even though you know that he's supposed to come in, but he never comes in whenever you come in on that specific day.
Yeah, I can't control that. So you know what I'm doing? First chance I get to change my availability, I'm not working that day. Or I have to accept it and suck it up and show up. Or I'll pick another day. That's because I know some days are heavy, right? You need all hands. But if there's a way to like try to circumvent that or work around the manager and just be like, well, I can't work this one busy day, but maybe I can come in during this time or something like that. And then you just don't work during those other times, right? Because you're not going to be able to change that and get set up. But I just know working those type of jobs that you can like not align yourself with certain people and you can still work that day. Like you can still work that day, but be like, hey, I'm only available during this time and I have to go. Like, and you might have to, you might have to like suck it up and work that trash shift for like 3 months until there's an opportunity, like a few months until you have an opportunity to like change your rotation. But then you'll be free. You'll be free after that. So that's what I would do.
How about this? I'll throw in another one for you, man, just for brownie points, I guess, for whoever's watching. So how about a situation, man, where you're working in a setting and the person above you is more so like a senior, considered a senior role compared to yours, where you're just like flat out just a regular role. And
Mhm.
so in the situation, the senior basically looks at you as being lunch food or lunch meat, you know what I'm saying? So all the tasks that they're supposed to be doing, he or she, however you want to apply that. They give you all the hard tasks while they do all the simple tasks. How do you think that you would be able to handle that one? And
Oh,
they take your
like,
credit.
oh, well, I already dealt with that. So and this ties into the last one too. There are two other options on the back end, and this is going to answer this one too. One, you can run a spot. Like you can actually the thing is that some of these people in management, like they're lazy. So
Yeah,
they
big time.
actually some people take pride in the ability to delegate. Like that was one of my things. Like I would deal with issues at work and I would be like, you know what, I'm just going to run it. And then I get promoted and then all my problems, I had new problems, but the old problems went away. Right. So that's always an option that if someone's lazy, you can always go work somewhere else for one. But there's just symptoms of working for people. All right. You're just going to have to deal with some of this. Like we all have to, but you can always be like, you know what? You're not a good manager. But when a regional person comes around, I'm like, I like to be on the management track. Right. Like, or you go work somewhere else. Now, as far as someone taking credit for what you're doing, that might be that could be a cultural thing, like a culture within the organization that's allowing that type of behavior. Because I've worked in an environment where someone was actually able to pick up on that and they're gone. but it's a situation where you have to understand, is there another opportunity somewhere else for you? Sometimes the job being trash is telling you something. That's why I started a business, is because I was tired of some of this stuff that happens, and it's everywhere. Like it's not like your job sucking is not special. Okay. Like do not confuse yourself for 1 minute thinking that your crappy job is isolated incident. All right. Just a dime a dozen. But I think that's how I navigated. But y'all took a lot of this up. So I'll let you close it out.
No, that's perfect, man. I didn't help that I threw in some additional there. So, yeah, man. So just to close in on that post-situation reflection, man. So the whole point is basically when you think of post-situation reflection, after navigating through that challenging scenario, the plan is, or the point of it is to really discuss the importance of reflection within yourself, your peers, whoever might be a listening ear, whoever you may confide in, maybe your mentor on the job, if you feel that comfortable. I wouldn't, but some people are different. And so basically the whole idea is to reflect on like what lessons were learned in those situations and basically avoiding a reoccurrence of that situation. Cause I promise you're going to see the same thing or the same situation you're currently dealing with in another setting at a different level, whether you move up or you move somewhere else. It's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be presented just a little bit different because you might change to a different business industry, but it's all the same. Honestly, people going to be people. We already talked about this. So to end on a good note, man, moving forward, man, the goal for you or the plan for you, I challenge you is to emphasize that one challenging situation does not define your entire career. And you have to keep telling yourself that, because if you let that eat you up, it's going to bleed into everything else. There's been situations where I lost jobs. I got laid off. There's situations where I quit and I had no idea what was coming next. And it's all because I had bad experiences on the job at a young age. But all those bad experiences at a very young age prepped me to where I move pretty much however I want to move at this point in the game, just because I didn't see so much through my work experience. I've been working on paper since I was 17 or 16. I've been working on paper since 17. I've been working
On
before that,
paper.
but on paper since 17. So, you know what I'm saying? I've been in the field for a little bit as far as seeing all kind of different levels of management, uh, to the point where I have a preference on management styles. But you know what I'm saying? You can't choose that, but you still can have a preference just like anybody else. And,
Yeah.
there's all kind of things where I have certain things that I've picked up over time that that I favor to or gravitate towards. But I also understand that if I have a goal and I'm trying to get there, I'm gonna have to go through some of the worst things and some of the situations I've never been in just to make it there. I mean, if you keep running in the same situations and sticking to what you know, you're never going to grow at the rate you want to. So just keep that in mind that you have to go through some of these tough situations so you can identify them when they come across your table in key situations, and you can win and excel by navigating through it, or somehow pulling some magic out of a hat or something. I know, a rabbit out of a hat or something, and just surpassing it however you work your magic. But we took up enough time, man. Later.
Yep, so